America printed dollars, yet London learned how to move them faster than Washington could ever react really. Eurodollars were American in name only, living offshore, beyond Federal Reserve walls, yet inside British law forever. London became the silent partner in America's currency, hosting banks that traded dollars without American permission daily. And once money found freedom there, it never forgot the feeling of moving without borders ever again. This offshore dollar market began quietly, born from regulations America wrote to manage banks after difficult crises. Banks simply shifted activity abroad, placing deposits in London, where rules were lighter and profits heavier still. The dollars never left America on paper, yet they multiplied in London's ledgers like restless shadows nightly. Soon corporations, all states, and governments everywhere borrowed and lent offshore, trusting London's discipline and discretion implicitly. America gained influence because its currency ruled trade, yet London gained power by managing that influence effectively. Dollars cleared through London money markets, repo desks, and correspondent networks woven across continents like nerves everywhere. When Wall Street slept, the city remained awake, adjusting rates that shaped borrowing costs worldwide each night. Thus the dollar had two homes, one political in Washington, one practical and financial in London forever. Eurodollars thrived because they escaped reserve requirements, interest ceilings, and domestic scrutiny from American regulators altogether easily. London offered expertise, stability, and legal continuity, the ingredients required to transform loopholes into permanent infrastructure globally. Banks discovered they could create dollar deposits offshore by simple bookkeeping, expanding credit beyond American control entirely. The machine became self-sustaining because borrowers preferred flexibility and lenders preferred discretion over patriotic compliance almost always. Crises exposed the partnership repeatedly, reminding Washington that London helped stabilize the very dollar it exported abroad. When American banks needed funding, London money markets quietly supplied liquidity, while officials debated policy responses anxiously. The Federal Reserve eventually recognized reality, extending support facilities that reached offshore dollar networks through London directly. In practice, the world built a shared system, American in currency, but profoundly British in architecture beneath. Hedge funds, commodities traders, and multinationals priced deals in dollars, while negotiating quietly inside London boardrooms daily. Law firms wrote contracts under English jurisdiction, ensuring disputes resolved predictably, even when politics turned unstable elsewhere. Clearinghouses settled derivatives referenced to American benchmarks, yet governed by British rules and oversight rooted in precedent. This hybrid system blurred geography, creating a financial empire without borders, anchored in London's confidence and continuity. Some critics warned that offshore dollars undermined democracy, allowing capital to escape accountability and weaken domestic control. Others argued the market increased resilience, providing alternative funding when national systems froze during crisis or mismanagement. In truth, both perspectives contained fragments of reality, because the Eurodollar world magnified opportunity and risk simultaneously. And standing between them, London translated fear into pricing, turning uncertainty into spreads, margins, and structured obligations. The partnership deepened as electronic trading emerged, shrinking time zones while expanding London's reach into every market. Wall Street and the city became twin engines, sharing information, staff, and capital flows like circulating blood. Yet cultural differences endured. New York louder and faster, London quieter, older, and more procedural, always still. Together they shaped a global order where power depended less on territory than settlement, liquidity, and credibility. When developing nations borrowed, their loans were denominated in dollars, sourced through London's intricate banking channels internationally. Debt negotiations often referenced American rates, but British legal frameworks, blending two empires into one financial architecture. This created dependency, because policy sometimes mattered less than offshore funding conditions set thousands of miles away. Still, participation promised growth, so governments accepted the trade-off, enjoying access while surrendering elements of autonomy quietly. Whenever the dollar trembled, attention turned to London, asking whether liquidity would continue flowing through established channels. Often the answer depended on confidence rather than regulation, because trust determines whether banks lend during stress. So London guarded trust fiercely, cultivating reputation like a national resource more valuable than oil or gold. Every successful settlement strengthened the myth of inevitability, convincing markets London would always finish the job flawlessly. This silent partnership blurred sovereignty, raising questions about who truly controlled the lifeblood of global finance today. Was it Washington with tools, or London with plumbing, networks, and trust built over centuries of crises? Perhaps control was shared, yet unequal, because infrastructure often outlasts elections, speeches, and sudden ideological changes worldwide, and infrastructure belonged to London, not by law, but by habit, competence, and accumulated memory from generations. America sometimes questioned this arrangement, yet dismantling it risked destabilizing the same global system supporting its dominance. So both nations continued cooperating, occasionally arguing in public, while preserving shared interests beneath diplomatic language carefully. For London, the partnership meant influence without empire, a throne built quietly from clearinghouses, contracts, and trust. For America, it meant global demand for dollars, financed, cleared, and recycled through London's disciplined financial machinery. This was the dollar's silent partner, invisible on passports, yet present in every major transaction worldwide today. Students borrowing loans, airlines hedging fuel, governments issuing bonds, all touched London's markets sooner or later inevitably. The city became a mirror reflecting American currency back to the world, shaped by British risk philosophy. And the world accepted this balance, because the alternative meant fragmentation, friction, and greater uncertainty for everyone. London never claimed ownership of the dollar, yet it learned how to guide its circulation gently worldwide. Power arrived not through proclamation, but through competence repeated until familiarity hardened into unquestioned dependence globally forever. So the dollar walks with two shadows, Washington in daylight and London moving silently beneath twilight clouds, and behind every offshore dollar transaction, you will almost always find London listening, counting, and settling patiently. Yet the partnership faced trials whenever crises exposed hidden leverage inside London's vast offshore dollar machinery quietly. In 2008, markets froze, and banks begged the system they once trusted to keep breathing for life. Liquidity evaporated overnight, proving speed and complexity amplify fear faster than any regulator can respond in time. Washington opened dollar lifelines that flowed through London, acknowledging offshore dependence could no longer be denied publicly. The Federal Reserve extended swaps to allies, yet London distributed oxygen to banks gasping across continents daily. This revealed truth often ignored. Plumbing shapes power more than speeches, ideology, or patriotic declarations about money. After crisis, regulators tightened rules while banks adapted structures, keeping eurodollars alive inside quieter jurisdictions for decades. Trust survived because London paid claims, honored contracts, and maintained discretion even during global panic every time. The partnership evolved from convenience into necessity as derivatives, repo funding, and global trade demanded dollar liquidity. London's desks matched borrowers and lenders across time zones, smoothing shocks before headlines reached evening broadcasts everywhere. America gained flexibility because allies could still access dollars even when politics complicated domestic lending conditions badly. And London gained influence because the world prefers competence, especially when fear shadows every financial decision made. Some critics warned democracy weakens when offshore markets pressure governments to prioritize creditors over citizens during crises. Others argued interdependence preserves peace, because nations think carefully before harming the system funding them at all. Both views coexist inside London's institutions, where pragmatism outweighs ideology and continuity protects stability for the world. So the silent partnership endures, balancing sovereignty against infrastructure in a relationship either side will abandon easily. As Asia rises, London remains indispensable, because it speaks every financial language with disciplined neutrality and memory. Digital currencies promise disruption, yet institutions still need trusted hubs to settle disputes and final payments reliably. The dollar may dominate headlines, but London dominates the choreography that flows beneath those headlines every day. Power now belongs to whoever maintains confidence, and London defends confidence with tireless professionalism and history combined. In quiet rooms, bankers acknowledge the system survives, because both nations tolerate shared control without ceremony today. Washington guards policy levers, while London manages plumbing, together sustaining the currency underpinning global commerce continually everywhere. This arrangement feels temporary, yet decades pass, and temporary becomes structure shaping expectations across generations of traders. So the dollar's silent partner continues working, careful, discreet, and endlessly prepared for tomorrow's uncertainty once again. If this story changed how you see the dollar's shadow partnership stretching quietly through London every day, remember, the strongest empires rarely announce power. They simply maintain the systems everyone depends on without question. Subscribe for more untold histories where money, psychology, and law intertwine beneath the surface of everyday life. Because the next crisis will again reveal who truly runs the system, while the world watches anxiously.